Hello there, men, and welcome to the Masculinism Movement channel, a place for men to be men and talk about masculinity and men's rights and issues. I'm your host, Brian Krall, and today I'm here to tell you that women are violent abusers and oppressors of men. Shocking, right, to hear me say that? And you might not believe it at first, even, but what if I told you that domestic violence wasn't so much a problem that affects women as it is one that affects men? What if I told you that most domestic violence wasn't actually perpetrated by men against women, but by women against men or other women? You wouldn't believe me, of course, because of the great degree of propaganda that feminists have churned out about domestic violence, painting women as the perpetual victims of it and men as the toxic, predatory aggressors who must be jailed for their heinous crimes. But what if I told you that in many, if not most cases in which the man has actually gotten violent with the woman, that she actually was violent with him first, and he was either defending himself or engaging in a fight with a woman who is supposed to be his equal in the eyes of feminism and the law, who has chosen to start a physical fight with someone as an adult? And what if I told you that what happens even more than that is a woman getting physically abusive and violent with a man and him having no ability to defend himself physically or legally? That when men opt out of physically defending themselves from a female who is attacking them, and instead do what the law says they are supposed to, which is to call the police, that, the police often fail to file a report on the female aggressor and won't allow the man to press charges. Or when they do, the charges often end up getting dismissed in court. Or worse yet, oftentimes when the men call police on a girlfriend who's behaving abusively, she will often manipulate them into believing that he was actually the one abusing her and get him kicked out of his own house or even arrested without any evidence even. What if I told you that this whole time that feminists wanted you to believe that women are innocent victims and men are inherently abusive, that it was actually the other way around, and that we've all been fooled by this projection and this hypocritical double standard that we've been brainwashed into believing so that women can get away with abusing men? And what if I told you that the most domestic violence actually occurs in lesbian relationships, because women are really more inherently abusive, toxic people than men are? Is this starting to sound believable yet? Is it starting to ring any bells of past experiences you might have had with women or people you know might have had? Well, let's get to the bottom of this and see what the facts really are. Below, I have provided you with a list of several links from all of the most major and credible news outlets detailing credible, evidence-based reports on how women have actually fooled us about this domestic violence issue so that they can get away with being the abusers. So get the facts below, and let's stop letting women manipulate and abuse us men and get away with it. Women actually do perpetrate domestic violence more than men do. They know they can get away with it because most men won't defend themselves because they've been taught since they were children to never hit a girl. And there's been enough other propaganda making women out to be, these innocent victims and men as toxic, aggressive apes. And again, if they call the police will take the woman's side because it's what they are trained to do. There's this systemic sexism in the police force. And in fact, it is so socially acceptable for a woman to beat a man that she can literally do it in public, out in the open, in crowded places, and no one will even care. Actually, some people find it funny. And there's no social programs or resources or shelters for men who are victims of domestic violence. I know because I was one. I became homeless once because I lived with a woman who was constantly getting violent with me. And whenever the police were called, they would take her side and I would get kicked out of the house, and things just kept getting worse and worse until I ended up getting kicked out for good and becoming homeless and having to spend 3 months homeless in the shelter system, which, guess what the men's shelters really are? They are halfway houses. And it's not going to be a safe space for a male victim. So it turns out all along we've been seeing the abusers as the victims and supporting the wrong people. And it is time that we stood up to women and started supporting the real victims, which is us men, because there are so few social programs out there to help men who are victims of domestic violence or other violent crimes, as they often are. Men are the victims of violent crimes more often than women are, and yet there is less support for victims in the criminal justice system. In fact, the criminals get more rights than the victims of crimes do. I, again, know because I've also been a victim of a violent crime on the job before. And, there was really no support in the justice system for me as a man. That kind of support is really reserved for the female victims out there. And while there are over 2,000 shelters for female victims of domestic violence in the U.S., which are state-run and funded by taxpayer dollars, of which men are paying at least half, but probably much more, and almost none of them help men. There's only one shelter in the United States that does. So men like me who are in domestic violence situations and need to get out of the home, even if it means becoming homeless, are sent by the state to men's shelters that double as halfway houses for criminals just getting out of jail, where we can experience further assault, even sexual assault, as I did. This is because it is widely believed, even by the legal system, that men cannot be the victims of abuse by women, especially sexual abuse. This is because it is widely believed by the legal system that men cannot be the victims of abuse by women. Men can't be the victims of sexual assault, and men can't be anything but the abuser or aggressor when it comes to domestic violence situations. And as I said before, the police are against men. If a man calls the police on a woman who's assaulting them, wanting them to intervene, if she even so much as breaks a nail while assaulting them, he will be the one arrested for assault. That is something I am quoting an actual police officer on, who was quoted as saying this in the Red Pill documentary, which I reported on in my video called Red Pills. Men have no human right to defend themselves against female assault, and men have no social support when they are the victims of female domestic violence and abuse. And the programs that are funded by male tax dollars on domestic violence and all the messages that are put out through these programs are all very anti-male and misandristic. But again, don't take my word for it. All of the evidence and proof that you need is cited there below from all of the most credible news sources out there. And even a book written by Thomas James Esquire, a lawyer, called Domestic Violence, the 12 Things You Aren't Supposed to Know. So there's a lot of very interesting data for you to look through below that proves the case that women are actually the violent abusers and oppressors of men, and that the domestic violence issues have obviously been skewed, and we have been manipulated and deceived by feminism, which it has been able to do through the systemic sexism against men because of the fact that we live in a gynocentric matriarchy. So the case is closed on that. That proves that women are violent abusers and not men. So that concludes this talk. Thank you for listening. Be sure to share your own thoughts and opinions by commenting below. And if you have been the victim of domestic violence or any kind of female abuse, be sure to share your story and any pertinent details and information you would like to generate awareness about, all right? Because one of the reasons I am even doing this at all is to make sure that all of you men out there and all of the issues that you have can be heard, all right? So make sure to share your story below if you feel it's pertinent. And if you like this video, be sure to hit the like button and share these messages with everyone by sharing the video on social media and talking about these things too. And lastly, make sure you've gone over all those links in the description below, including the resources I've provided for you for your masculine personal development and living the life you want to as an independent man. And stay tuned for the next video coming out soon, which will be on how women are more aggressive, violent, and tyrannical leaders than men are. And make sure you subscribe so you'll be notified when that is. And until then, take care of yourselves, men, because no woman out there is going to.